Deep beneath the Atacama Desert, in the most advanced physics facility ever built by human hands, Dr. Elena Santos stared at the holographic display with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The quantum readings defied everything she thought she knew about physics. The air hummed with the subtle vibration of containment fields as the experimental drive core pulsed with an otherworldly light. "Run it again, Kai," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Her research partner nodded, dark eyes focused on the control panel as his fingers danced across the haptic interface. The Quantum Propulsion Laboratory had been designed to research conventional FTL methods, the same ones used by the handful of distant civilizations they detected over the decades. Instead, they'd stumbled onto something else entirely. Something new, something dangerous. The test chamber, a reinforced cube barely 20 centimeters on each side, filled with what looked like liquid darkness. Reality seemed to shudder, and for a moment Elena could have sworn she saw through space itself, as if the universe had sprung a leak. "Energy spike," called out Dr. James Chen from his monitoring station. "These readings, they're unlike anything in our database. This isn't just breaking the light barrier, it's tearing through it." Elena watched as their test object, a simple titanium sphere, vanished from one side of the chamber and appeared on the other. But it hadn't moved through the intervening space. Instead, it had punched straight through the fabric of reality itself. "Full stop," Elena ordered, her heart pounding. "Save all data. Triple redundancy." As the system powered down, she studied the aftermath readings with growing concern. The local space-time distortions weren't dissipating as their models had predicted. Instead, they were spreading, creating ripples in the quantum foam like aftershocks from a subatomic earthquake. "The containment field is holding," Kai reported, "but these ripples, they're getting stronger, not weaker." Elena's mind raced. They had created something unprecedented, an FTL drive that didn't carefully step through higher dimensions like alien designs, but instead forced its way through reality itself. The implications were staggering. Before she could voice her concerns, every sensor in the facility suddenly redlined. The quantum core, despite being powered down, flared with that impossible light again. Space itself shuddered, and Elena felt a sensation she would later describe as reality screaming. What they couldn't know was that at that exact moment, 300 light-years away, on a galactic assembly monitoring post, alarms that had never activated before began to wail. The myriad observer on duty stared in horror at readings that shouldn't have been possible. Humans, the primitive species that had barely mastered orbital flight, had done something that violated the fundamental laws of physics as understood by even the most advanced civilizations. Back in the lab, Elena and her team worked frantically to contain the cascade of spatial distortions their experiment had triggered. They had no way of knowing that their breakthrough had just announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, by demonstrating that humans could tear holes in the universe itself. As the quantum core finally stabilized, Elena collapsed into her chair, staring at the test chamber. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but something in her gut told her this was just the beginning. Humanity had knocked on the door to the cosmos not with a gentle tap, but with a battering ram that threatened to bring down the walls of reality itself. Within hours, the facility was swarming with government officials and military personnel. Elena found herself explaining their discovery to a room full of ashen-faced leaders who seemed to alternate between excitement and terror at the implications. "Can it be weaponized?" a general asked, predictably. "With respect, sir," Elena replied, "that's the wrong question. We've done something far more significant than create a weapon. We've fundamentally changed our understanding of how reality works." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the facility suddenly went dark. When they flickered back to life, they showed a message in precisely formed letters. "Attention humanity. CES all QUANTUM experimentation. I'm METLY. Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, REN ROTI. Do not a TMPT to flee or hide. Your exosions, HAVBENDHTCTE. Humanity's age of isolation was over. Whether they were ready or not, the galaxy had noticed them, and it was afraid. The arrival of the Galactic Assembly ships transformed Earth's night sky into an alien-like show. 7 vessels of impossible geometries descended through the atmosphere, their hulls shimmering with colors humans had no names for. They arranged themselves in a perfect heptagon pattern above the Atacama facility, a formation that Dr. Elena Santos immediately recognized as both a show of force and a containment pattern. The first contact team that materialized in the facility's main conference room defied human expectations. No humanoid aliens, no gray beings with large eyes. Instead, 3 entities stood before them. A crystalline structure that shifted and flowed like living geometry. A column of iridescent mist that somehow held a definite form. And a creature that seemed to be made of overlapping shadows and starlight. I am First Speaker Nexus, the crystalline being announced, its voice resonating directly in their minds. With me are Observer Mist of the Ethereal Collective and Arbiter Eclipse of the Dark Confluence. We represent the Galactic Assembly's Emergency Response Council. Elena stepped forward, ignoring the military personnel who tried to hold her back. I'm Dr. Elena Santos, lead researcher on the Quantum Drive project. Whatever concerns you have about our work. Concerns. The misty being's form rippled with what might have been incredulity. You have torn wounds in the fabric of reality itself, wounds that are still spreading. This goes beyond mere concern. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing real-time representations of space-time. Elena's breath caught as she saw the damage their test had caused. A network of cracks spreading through the quantum foam, like fractures in a cosmic windshield. The rifts your drive created are expanding exponentially, Arbiter Eclipse explained, its voice like distant thunder. They threaten established trade routes, colony worlds, and the very stability of this sector of space. We didn't know, Elena began, but stopped as she studied the displays more carefully. Something about the pattern of the fractures. They weren't random. They followed a distinct mathematical progression. Your ignorance does not diminish the danger, First Speaker Nexus stated. The Assembly has authorized immediate intervention. All research data must be surrendered. All facilities associated with this technology must be decommissioned. Compliance is not optional. General Richards, who had been surprisingly quiet until now, stepped forward. Now wait just a minute. You can't just come here and demand. We can, and we must. Observer Mist interrupted, its form swirling with agitation. Your species has created something that should not be possible. The laws of physics as understood by even our most advanced civilizations say this cannot be done. Yet you did it. Accidentally, in an underground lab. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is? Elena barely heard the brewing argument. Her attention was fixed on the holographic displays, her mind racing as she analyzed the pattern of the spreading rifts. The fractures, she muttered, they're not just spreading. They're evolving. The 3 alien representatives turned to her simultaneously. Explain, demanded Arbiter Eclipse. Look at the progression, Elena said, manipulating the hologram with growing excitement. These aren't random tears in space-time. They're following a pattern similar to crystal growth, but organic. Like living tissue trying to heal itself. First Speaker Nexus's crystalline form shifted in what might have been surprise. Impossible. Space-time cannot self-repair. The damage your drive causes is permanent. According to whose physics? Elena challenged. You said it yourself. We did something your science says is impossible. Maybe your understanding of space-time is incomplete. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just created a dangerous new technology. They'd stumbled onto an entirely new understanding of how the universe worked. Even if you're right, Observer Mist said finally, the rifts are still spreading. Other worlds are at risk. Then let us help fix it, Alina proposed. Work with us instead of trying to suppress the technology. We clearly see things differently than your civilizations. Maybe that's exactly what's needed right now. The alien representatives conferred silently for several moments, their forms shifting and interweaving in what seemed to be an intense debate. Finally, first speaker Nexus turned back to Alina. The Assembly will not permit continued testing of the drive, it stated firmly. However, we are intrigued by your hypothesis about the nature of these rifts. We will establish a joint research initiative, under strict supervision, to study this phenomenon. And if Dr. Santos is wrong? General Richards asked. Then Earth will be quarantined, Arbiter Eclipse replied simply. And your species will be forever remembered as the ones who nearly shattered the galaxy. As the aliens departed to make their preparations, Alina stared at the holographic display of the spreading rifts. She hadn't told them everything she'd noticed, like how the mathematical pattern of the tears suggested they weren't just random damage, but rather the universe attempting to adapt to a fundamental change in its operating principles. Humanity hadn't just created a dangerous new drive. They'd accidentally started evolving the laws of physics themselves, and now they had to prove they could handle that responsibility before it was taken away from them forever. The joint research facility established beneath the Atacama Desert had transformed into a surreal fusion of human and alien technology. Crystalline quantum computers interfaced with Earth servers, while monitoring equipment that defied human understanding tracked the spreading rifts in spacetime. Dr. Alina Santos found herself working alongside beings that challenged her very conception of life and intelligence. The rifts have reached the Carina sector, Observer Mist reported, its ethereal form displaying data in shifting patterns of light. 3 colony worlds have already been evacuated. The Assembly is growing impatient. Alina barely looked up from her workstation, where she was analyzing the latest simulation results. They're not just growing impatient. They're growing afraid. First speaker Nexus, who had remained on Earth as the Assembly's primary representative, shifted its crystalline form in what Alina had learned was agreement. You perceive more than you should, Dr. Santos. Yes, the Assembly fears what your discovery represents. Because we did something your science says is impossible. Because you did it by accident. The crystalline being's form pulsed with complex patterns. Your species hasn't even unified your planetary government. You still burn fossil fuels. Yet you casually manipulate forces that our most advanced civilizations cannot comprehend. Do you understand how terrifying that is to species that have spent millennia carefully advancing their technology? A new alarm blared through the facility. On the main display, another rift appeared, this one near the Pleiades cluster. But something was different about this tear in spacetime. That's not from our test, Alina said, studying the readings. The energy signature is similar, but altered. No, first speaker Nexus confirmed, its tone somehow both angry and afraid. This rift was created by a new drive. Someone has replicated your technology. The implications hit Alina like a physical blow. Despite the Assembly's quarantine, despite their warnings, someone had been watching, learning. And now they had their own version of humanity's dangerous discovery. Arbiter Eclipse materialized in the chamber, its form darker than usual. The Swarm Collective has acquired the technology. They claim to have improved upon the human design. They demand the Assembly recognize their right to develop it further. The Swarm? Alina asked, noting how both alien representatives seemed to recoil at the name. Imagine locusts that evolved into a spacefaring civilization, Observer Mist explained, its misty form swirling with distress. They consume resources of entire systems to fuel their expansion. We've contained them for millennia, but with this technology, they'll be unstoppable. First speaker Nexus finished. The facility's quantum sensors suddenly screamed. On the display, the new rift began to behave differently than the others. Instead of the organic growth pattern Alina had observed, this tear was spreading aggressively, consuming spacetime itself. They've weaponized it, Alina whispered, watching in horror as the rift began to accelerate. They don't understand what they're dealing with. They're treating space-time like something to be conquered rather than. She stopped, a new understanding dawning. All this time, she'd been thinking about the rifts wrong. Everyone had. They weren't damaged to be repaired or weapons to be controlled. They were growing pains. "Show me the complete data on all rifts," she demanded. Not just individual tiers, but the entire pattern across the galaxy. The aliens complied, and a vast holographic display filled the chamber. Alina's breath caught as she saw the full picture for the first time. The rifts weren't just spreading randomly. They were forming a vast, interconnected network. "It's not destroying space-time," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's rewriting it, creating new pathways, like a nervous system growing through the galaxy itself." First Speaker Nexus's form shifted rapidly as it analyzed the pattern. "Impossible. Space-time is a fixed medium. It cannot evolve or adapt. According to whose laws of physics?" Alina challenged. "We've already proved those laws are incomplete. What if space-time isn't just a static backdrop? What if it's alive in some way we don't understand? And what if our drive wasn't an accident, but the first step in triggering some kind of cosmic evolution?" Before anyone could respond, new alarms blared. The Swarm Collective had activated multiple drives simultaneously. The rifts were spreading faster than ever, but their pattern was wrong. Chaotic, destructive, like cancer cells compared to healthy growth. "They're going to tear the galaxy apart," Observer Mist warned. "The Assembly must act now." Alina stared at the displays, watching the beautiful pattern she discovered being corrupted by the swarm's brutal approach. She knew what had to be done, but it would mean revealing everything she'd learned about the true nature of their discovery. "I know how to stop them," she said finally, "but you're not going to like it. Because it means accepting that everything you think you know about physics, about space-time itself, might be wrong. And it means trusting humanity to handle powers that even we don't fully understand." The alien representatives exchanged what passed for glances among their species. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the only solution came from the very species they'd been trying to contain. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly was unlike anything in the galaxy's recorded history. Representatives from over 1,000 species gathered in the vast crystalline chamber, their various environmental bubbles and containment fields creating a kaleidoscope of technologies. At the center of it all stood Dr. Alina Santos, about to propose something that would either save the galaxy or doom it. "The Swarm Collective has activated 15 more drives," the Emergency Council reported. "The fabric of space-time is being torn apart faster than we can evacuate systems. We estimate total collapse of affected sectors within 30 standard days." Alina stepped forward, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "What you're seeing isn't destruction, it's transformation. And fighting it is only making things worse." She gestured, and a holographic display shifted to show the complex network of rifts spreading through space. "Look at the pattern. Where our original drive created these organized, almost organic growths, the swarm's weapons are creating chaotic tiers. They're corrupting a natural process we barely understand." "Natural?" A representative of the Mechanist Concordat buzzed in artificial outrage. "There is nothing natural about ripping holes in space-time." "According to whose definition of natural?" Alina challenged. "We've all been thinking about space-time as something static, unchanging, a backdrop for the universe to exist in. But what if it's more than that? What if it's alive in some way we don't understand?" She manipulated the display, highlighting the intricate patterns formed by the original rifts. "These aren't random tiers. They're more like neural pathways, as if space-time itself is trying to evolve, to develop new connections, and our drive somehow triggered this process." First Speaker Nexus floated forward, its crystalline form refracting the chamber's light. "Even if your theory is correct, the swarm's weapons are corrupting this pattern. The damage spreads exponentially." "Exactly," Alina said. because they're treating it like something to be conquered and controlled. But what if instead of fighting the rifts, we work with them? Help guide this evolution instead of trying to stop it. The chamber erupted in overlapping transmissions and signals. Some species supported the idea, seeing the potential in this new understanding of reality. Others called for Elena's immediate arrest, viewing her proposal as even more dangerous than the swarm's weapons. You propose we simply allow space-time itself to change. Observer Mist's form swirled with concern. The risks are incalculable. The risk of doing nothing is certain destruction, Elena countered. She brought up new data, showing the latest simulations. I've modified our original drive design. Instead of tearing through space-time, it resonates with these natural patterns. It could help guide this evolution, like a gardener tending to a growing plant. Arbiter Eclipse materialized beside her, its dark form somehow more solid than usual. The swarm approaches the core worlds. We must decide now. Elena took a deep breath. There's something else, something I discovered in the original test data that I haven't shared until now. She manipulated the controls, and a new pattern appeared in the display. These quantum signatures, they're not unique. They're echoes of something that already exists naturally in space-time. Our drive didn't create something new. It awakened something that was already there. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't invented a way to break reality. They'd accidentally discovered that reality itself was far more complex and alive than anyone had imagined. The swarm's weapons are like a virus, Elena continued. They're corrupting these natural patterns. But my modified drive could act like an immune response, helping space-time heal itself and adapt to these new pathways in a controlled way. And if you're wrong? First Speaker Nexus asked, if this evolution you speak of destroys everything we know, then we face that possibility together, Elena replied. But right now, we know the swarm's approach will definitely destroy everything. At least my way gives us a chance to understand what's really happening to our galaxy. The Assembly representatives began to debate their various forms of communication, creating a symphony of tension in the chamber. But they all fell silent as new alarms blared. On the main display, dozens of new rifts appeared as the swarm launched a massive attack. We're out of time, Arbiter Eclipse announced. The Assembly must vote now. Do we trust the humans, the species that started all this, to help us end it? Or do we maintain our old understanding of physics even as it fails around us? Elena stood straight, feeling the weight of a galaxy's future on her shoulders. She knew her solution was dangerous, unconventional, and based on theories that challenged everything these advanced civilizations believed. But it was also uniquely human, facing the unknown not with fear, but with curiosity and adaptation. The fate of the galaxy would rest not on who had the most advanced technology or the oldest civilization, but on who could adapt fastest to a universe that had just become far stranger than anyone had imagined. The modified quantum drive hummed with a sound unlike anything ever heard in the universe, not the harsh tear of the swarm's weapons, nor the careful step of conventional FTL drives, but something almost musical. Dr. Elena Santos stood at the control center of the Assembly's flagship, surrounded by representatives of a dozen species, as they prepared to either save the galaxy or watch it transform into something entirely new. Swarm forces have breached the Carina defense line, Observer Mist reported, its misty form agitated. Their drive weapons are creating cascading tears in local spacetime. Complete sector collapse imminent. Elena studied the holographic display, showing the spread of rifts across the galaxy. Where the original patterns had been almost organic, growing like neural pathways through space, the swarm's weapons created jagged, cancerous tears that spread destruction in their wake. The modified drive is ready, she announced. But I need to warn you all one last time. This isn't just about stopping the swarm. Once we activate this, space-time itself will begin to change. The universe as we know it will evolve. First Speaker Nexus shifted its crystalline form in what Elena had learned was their version of a nod. The Assembly has voted. Between certain destruction and uncertain transformation, we choose to embrace humanity's path. Elena took a deep breath and initiated the sequence. The drive activated, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the sensors exploded with data as new rifts began to form. But these were different. Instead of tearing through space-time, they seemed to flow through it, following the natural patterns Elena had discovered. By all our knowledge, this should be impossible, Arbiter Eclipse observed, its dark form rippling with what might have been awe. You're not forcing space-time to bend to your will. You're communicating with it. That's what we've all been missing, Elena said, watching as the new rifts spread to meet the swarm's tears. Space-time isn't just a backdrop for reality. It's part of reality itself. Living, growing, evolving. We just needed to learn its language. On the display, the pattern became clear. Where the modified drive's rifts met the swarm's tears, they didn't fight against them. They absorbed them, transformed them, integrated them into the larger pattern that was emerging across the galaxy. The swarm vessels report drive failure. Observer Mist announced. Their weapons, they're being neutralized, but not destroyed. They're being repurposed. Elena nodded, understanding flooding through her. Space-time isn't just healing itself, it's learning, adapting. Every tear the swarm creates is being transformed into part of the new network. They're not destroying the universe, they're accidentally helping it evolve faster. The Assembly representatives watched in amazement as the chaotic tears and careful rifts merged into something entirely new. The galaxy itself seemed to shiver as space-time began to transform, not into something broken, but into something more complex, more interconnected than ever before. Their weapons are useless now, First Speaker Nexus observed. Space-time itself rejects their attempt to force it into unnatural patterns. The swarm fleet is retreating. But Elena barely heard them. She was transfixed by the readings pouring in from across the galaxy. The new patterns weren't just stopping the destruction. They were creating something unprecedented. Natural FTL corridors were forming, linking distant parts of space in ways that were both more efficient and more stable than any artificial drive. "This is what it was always meant to be," she whispered. "We didn't invent a new drive system. We discovered how space-time naturally wants to connect. All our crude attempts at FTL travel were just precursors to this moment. The universe was waiting for someone to understand it wasn't just a set of laws to be followed, but a living system to be nurtured." Months later, Elena stood before the full Galactic Assembly one last time. The galaxy had changed. Natural FTL corridors now linked thousands of systems, created not by technology, but by space-time itself. The swarm had retreated to their territory, their weapons rendered obsolete by a universe that had evolved beyond their ability to harm it. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't just a new form of travel, she concluded in her address. It was a new way of seeing the universe itself, not as something to be conquered or controlled, but as something to be understood and guided. We succeeded not because we were the most advanced species, but because we were willing to question everything we thought we knew. Because when faced with the impossible, we chose to adapt rather than deny. The Assembly Chamber, once a place of fear and suspicion toward humanity, erupted in the various forms of approval used by its member species. Humanity had proven itself not just as a newcomer to galactic civilization, but as a species that could see possibilities others had missed for millennia. First Speaker Nexus approached Elena after the session. "We feared your species would destroy the galaxy," it admitted. "Instead, you taught us that the galaxy itself had potentials we never imagined. Perhaps that is why your drive worked when it did. The universe was waiting for a species that could think differently enough to understand its true nature." Elena smiled, watching the shifting patterns of FTL corridors visible through the chamber's quantum windows. The galaxy had changed, and with it, every species' understanding of reality itself. Humanity's greatest achievement hadn't been conquering the stars, but learning to listen to them. The age of forcing space-time to bow to technological will was over. A new era had begun, one where civilization grew alongside the very fabric of reality itself, guided by the unique perspective that humanity had brought to the cosmos.